Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So I'm working on my next live set and it's going to be all SP404 and I'll explain why in a minute. But usually I make videos breaking down how I do stuff on the SP after I perform a live set. But as I'm working on it, I figured, why don't I take you along? So if you have any questions or anything like that, throw them in the chat while we're live or put them in the comments after. We're going to talk about the one method that I wanted to use but couldn't because there's a bit of a problem, and then the ways I'm working around it, the other methods I'm doing. If you use the SP404 live, let me know in the chat how you're using it. I did post a poll. I'd be curious to hear if you use it for performance, for effects, if you've tried it and it wasn't for you, whatever have you. Put it in there. I'd love to hear that. Anyways, so I've got a new release out, this album, Through the Quiet Dark, and most of the tracks were made either on the SP or on other DAWless gear that I pattern sequenced and things like that along with the SP. So my original thought was, why don't I just use either the pattern chains that I've performed or, switch between patterns and then play something on top. I like to turn the SP into a performative device to keep it engaging. A lot of my live sets I turn into videos, and so I want to keep it interesting when you're watching it. So that means doing chromatic mode, doing performance effects, all that type of stuff. So that was my original idea. Let's just do pattern chaining, right? All of these songs I've made, I use the pattern chain. So here's my track Lingering Light. We can turn that on. And if I wanted to, right, I could do this, set the bus one effect. That's my main sample pad. I've got the synth here that I can play live. And then the song goes on, and then if I wanted to perform another part or thing like that, I can switch. But the beauty of this pattern chain is I've set the track that I want the song to play through, and so I don't have to worry about changing patterns, which is something I used to do for my live sets where I would just manually change the patterns. But doing it this way means I can play things on top, do effects, or if you want to do live instruments, you can play a live instrument right on top of it. Now the catch here is, and the reason I can't use this for this performance, I use multiple banks for a lot of my tracks. Like this song Lingering Light, I think it occupies for sure these drums, and a couple other banks for little effects and things like that. So I have songs all over the different projects on the SP. So my struggle and the catch here with this performance method was, well, there's not an easy way to move whole patterns and whole pattern chains to a different project. If I had a blank project, I could move some of that stuff. But even if I did, we'd run out of bank space. So what I chose to do was kind of find a middle ground and look at what parts in the song can I perform live, right? And then in what areas of the track. So as the track plays through, we have different things come in and out, and I can perform them. And so let me quickly just show, just as an example here for this DAW, what I did. I mapped out a song that I did. We'll go back into this song later, but basically what you can do, I just want a physical representation of what I'm talking about. You can find parts that you want to play live, like, oh, I want to do this whole intro here. So I just remove that whole part, and I'm going to play that as a loop that I put on the guitar. And so when it comes to the SP, what I did was just, instead of muting parts in the DAW and then throwing those into the SP, I took the actual slices from the track. So like I have this main. So all you need to do is go, okay, so I'll move this to my live set project. And all we have to do that is hit copy, and you'll see up here, let me see if I can get that a little closer to the camera for you. It says P07, that's project 7. We want that actually on project 2, so you just use this right knob, put it there, and now you see the banks from project 2, and we're using this project. I've already moved a lot of these and stuff because it is a little tedious, but it wouldn't be as tedious and slow as trying to move whole patterns and projects. But so you just move it to where you want it to go on this new project, copy it over, and then now it takes you back to the original project, so you have to switch over to project 2. But there's one other sound that I know we could do on this track, and that would be this bass. So I would move the bass as well. I've already done it, but you just do the same process. And then you need the full backing track, right? Because without that, you're not going to have anything. So there's a couple ways to approach that. You can either perform this, resample it into the SP using the resample method as you play it, or you can just jam it into your DAW, muting whatever sounds you know you want to perform. So like you could just go into that bass and drop it to 0, and then whatever song you play out of it, it's not going to have that part that you're going to play live. From there, if you don't do that, like for me, I had a full jam of it where I had other sounds that I performed live on top, and so I didn't want to recreate those. It kind of loses its vibe. I moved it into the DAW like I showed you with that other one, and I stem split the jam and then just muted the sections or chopped the sections that I knew I was going to perform, exported that, put it back into the SP, and then now we'll go to our live project. I like to have one project that's kind of always my live set, because if I ever need older tracks from previous live sets, they're still here. If you run out of space, I guess that's a problem, but it hasn't stopped me yet so far. So I found, let's go to the track here. So I moved this one here just for the example, but I already put what I want to perform here. And then we'll talk about this in a bit, but you also want to consider overall track volume when it comes to the cohesion as a live set. So like this original version's pretty loud. I had to drop it down quite a bit to kind of blend in with the rest of the tracks. So I'm going to raise the volume a little bit, but chat, let me know if it's a little quiet or anything like that. Just let me know in the chat. But so we have our bass, all of our chops, and so these chops were already in a mute group because of the way I performed them on the SP. But if you haven't done that, then you would want to hit Shift 8, put them in a mute group, which I think is, well, it doesn't matter. It's this one actually. I have a ton in like the same mute group, but it's mute group A, where I just have all of these in the mute group. And all that's going to do is just stop the previous one when you hit the next one. So like if I hold this one, the gate is off. It's a pretty long sample, right? For like a one shot. But if I do this, it cuts it off. And the only reason it played a little bit longer than it normally would, I set a release in the envelope so that this one plays out. But if I drop that, here it just stops. And it doesn't even stay lit anymore, right? Because it's just being completely choked. It's no longer getting played. And so that comes in handy because if you're using one shots, sometimes your timing may be a little off compared to the backing track. And so this kind of helps to save that when you're playing live. And so then we have our bass line that will perform chromatically. And then I have the full track minus the intro that I'm going to perform. Let me show you it as the sample. And then minus the whole bass, because I'm going to run that bass through on chromatic mode as it performs. So basically the way I would play this track live is set some effects, and I'll talk about this more, but I make a set map. You don't necessarily have to bring this, and I'm sorry about my handwriting, but I put on whatever bus effects I'm going to need, and then like I haven't even finished it yet. We'll get into this as we go. And then whatever end transitions we're going to do. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Sammy, I'll get to you in 1 second. Hold on there. So this is, I like to have kind of a map that I can create a muscle memory out of basically for when I do perform. Whether I have this or not, I've been practicing it and I can refer to it in all of my rehearsals. And so I know, okay, this is the bank I need to be for the first track. Bus one's going to be that. And then whatever end transition effects I'm going to do. And then I'll also write which bus that's going to be in. Because as you can see, I have bus one, that's the red one, for the chops, and then I have bus 2 for the main one shot so that I can do different sounds or different effects. And then typically I actually do the opposite of this. I run bus 1 into bus 2, but for this live set I kind of feel like I want to experiment doing separate because you can do different sounds. So like if I wanted to keep playing this part over the other thing and do, let's say, DJ effect looper, that sound won't get treated, and I like that. So Sammy, you ask, wait, release effects when sample is choked by a mute group. Not when the sample is choked, unless I'm interpreting that wrong. What release does on any sample, whether you're in a mute group or not, is when you let go, it's gonna ring out or keep playing for whatever duration you set. So that can help. I don't know why it's acting trippy right now, but that's all that's going to do. It just kind of lets it go. If you have gate off, I should say, actually, sorry. But when you have mute group and you don't have gate on, that's why it was still ringing. See how when I let go, it only plays for a second? You can see that little white line that follows. Whereas if I hold it right, it's going to play the whole way through. So when I have gate off, which is the way I have these, they will just play the whole way through, whether you have release on or not. But if you have it with a mute group and you have release on, even if you have gate, it will ring out a little more. See how it keeps playing? Whereas you can see it stays lit a little bit after I hit the trigger. So that way, because I just like for this song, I wanted it to have a little bit, when I was writing it, I wanted each pad to have a little more ringing out because these chops were a little kind of messy. So that was my workaround. So yeah, if you do mute groups and you put release on the envelope, it will work, even if you have gate off on anything like that. So that is a really good trick if you want those to ring out a little bit when you're actually still muting them, which isn't often, but like for this one, it's a good case of this. So let me show you real quick, back to the performance effects here. I've got SX reverb. That's basically what I'm going to use for every bus one. I like to, when I'm doing chops, have some reverb on it, because otherwise, I don't know, I just feel like it, when you're playing live, sometimes like there's this song, Moon Meld. If I don't have SX reverb on, it's like you hear that stumble. And even if it's right on time, there's still almost that little stumble. So I like to have the SX reverb on to just kind of clean that up. And that's more sometimes a factor of my laziness and how I chopped it. But this is an old track that I've kept here for performing because it's one of my favorites to play live. So that's just my workaround to just not have to find the project file and do all of that stuff. But SX reverb just kind of glues the chops together a little bit. Kodama is another good one for that. Anyways, let's get back to this. So if I were to play this song as I'm intending for the live set, I would perform this intro twice, then hit that, and you'll see I stopped playing this because I have the original sample playing again. So it'll go something like this. And then now I can prep the bass sample that I'm going to play. If you hold the value knob and hit 7, it doesn't trigger. Also very useful for any sort of live performance. Hit that chromatic mode. You can do all those effects, whatever. And then the bass is going to come in a second. And you get the idea. And so then I can still play, if I want to, I can still do some sort of effects on top. Or, you know, SX reverb. Kodama is another good one. If you're going to use an effect like Kodama though, make sure you set the BPM of the bank that you're working in, because that really helps. So if you hit Shift 11, which is the tap tempo, you can use this to set the bank. So this one's actually not set yet. I think that song was at 87 BPM from what I remember when we started the pattern. So that means when we use an effect like Kodama, which has a time factor to it, the timing values will be set for the proper BPM. So that will be a big help in terms of making sure the delays work. And you'll see some of them I don't have that, and you just kind of work with that when I'm doing something like a one-shot break where I have a full track. That's kind of my break from doing all these sorts of live sounds and things like that. So I think that's basically the first method that I'm going to use for this live set, and that's just still trying to do some sort of performance on top of the one-shot. And I wanted to do more than just something like, say, Moon Meld, which I've talked about in previous live set explainers, where I have this main pad, and then I have this. And so I'd use this in this part, and then the chorus. And so most of the track is just a one shot that I can then play this little sound on top of. For this live set, I wanted a little more interactivity and a little more variety. Like for Lingering Light, I'm playing that pad at the start, and then I switch to the bass sounds, and I'm doing effects on top of that. So it just gives a little more variety for performance, but also you have to think if you're doing YouTube videos, right, like what keeps it interesting. And same for just a live performance in general. It's just when you're performing in front of a crowd, they may not be like looking right on the SP, but a video is the eyes are right on that. So I'm thinking of ways to keep it interesting for the video, for the listener, but also for myself, because it's kind of boring if I'm just going to hit that. That's one of the reasons personally I don't typically use DJ mode. I just want a little more interactivity and then a little more flexibility with the different ways of performing. There's nothing wrong with DJ mode. It's awesome. And I've seen some incredible SP performances with it. And you can trigger live one-shots on top of DJ mode. So you can still do that. It just, for me, not my preferred way to work. So yeah, one thing though, like pattern chaining would be my ideal because it is more interactive. It is more structured. And you can also then kind of veer off and do your own alterations and stuff to make it more of like a live track instead of just playing the track that's recorded. The way I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap with this performance is using these things where I'll mute parts, have new sections. As I'll show you when we get into the next track, it'll show it a little bit more. Let me just make sure on my notes here if there's anything else I need to discuss about that. So we move the pattern over. Yeah, we talked about, yeah. So the key here is find the sections, and I'll go back over here for a second. Find the sections that you want to play, and then if you have it on the DAW, then get those isolated sounds, throw them in here, and chop it. And I'll show you that in a second. Sammy says, here and listening, man, love the stream. Perfect timing because I just sat down to work on my SP. Nice. Yeah, I really wanted to do some beat making for this live stream, but I needed some time to work on my live set, and I posted a poll 2 days ago, and I was like 100-something votes wanted to see the live set explainer. So I was like, well, this is a good time to work on my live set and just kind of go over my thoughts with you. And then if anybody has tips, feedback, or if these methods resonate with you, let me know. But yeah, I love performing live sets on the SP for this very reason. There's so many different ways you could do it. And this is just my kind of preferred way to do it, because you can still send an external instrument in. Like I could play my guitar on top of all of this. And that's why I like still doing that one-shot method or even the pattern method. It's just a nice way to kind of have some structure, not much room for error, but you can then play on top of it. Yeah, one last thing. For live performance, some of the effects I really like would be SX Reverb as kind of like we talked about, the glue for your chops, any chops that you're doing. Kodama is a really nice effect to use on the backing track as long as you sync the BPM. SX Reverb works really well as well because it can kind of give this nice reverb sound to the snare if you use it in very small doses, like maybe a wet of anywhere from 1 to 10. That's nice. DJ FX Looper is kind of the staple. Isolator can work. Filter is really cool for kind of guiding transitions between different parts in a track. And then Phaser's a nice one. And then, of course, you can do scatter. There's other ones you can do. If there's any that are your faithfuls, put it in the chat. Ryan's also in the chat, one of the channel members. He says, hey, painting my closet over here. Audio is good. Nice to hear, Ryan. Thanks. Have fun painting the closet. Hopefully you get some tips out of this. I know we've been working on some SP stuff. So, yeah. All right, let's go into the second example here. So some of the tracks that I'm using for this live set that are on this album were performed on things like the Digitact, and I didn't have Overbridge at the time. So all I had was just a stereo 2 track, and I want to move it to the SP for performance, and that's this track here. And you can see there's a lot for what would be just from a stereo 2 track. And so if we switch over here, I took that original audio file, which is this one up at the top here, and I stem split it in Logic. Thankfully, Logic added the stem splitter, and it's really come in handy of late. And it splits it into vocals, which there's no vocals on this one, drums, and then bass, and it's other, which is the melodic stuff. I'm gonna hit play real fast. I'm just gonna check if sound is coming through. Okay, yeah, it is. I just can't hear it because I'm into the headset. So I'm gonna just turn this volume on briefly, really quickly. So with this, basically what I did was the same kind of method where I found sections that I wanted to play. And for me, that was, I knew I wanted to play this guitar. And so I just chopped a section of that guitar. You can kind of see already, moved it down here, exported it to the SP. And then once I did that, hold on one second. Once I did that, let me switch back to the SP here. Sorry, moving all over the place. I apologize. Once I found this sample right here, and I can raise the volume back up, I said, okay, that's perfect. And since it was synced to a time, I knew that I could, like, there was a set measure of 4 bars or whatever have you. I could go into that and set auto mark, which I've already done, but you would just hit this. I did a time division of 4 because it was really 4 guitar chords. I almost did 8 because I wanted that bass note and then the other part, but I was like, that's just more to hit. Didn't feel like dealing with that. So I set that, put those chops to here. And you can hear that I need to fix a few things, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And then I knew that I didn't want to just do that the whole way through, because if I switch back over to Logic, in the stem, that's the melodic stem, there's a bit of a lead that starts playing. You can hear that lead. So if I were to not have that, like just that intro stem that I chopped, that lead would never come. And that's kind of a very important piece of this track. So I knew I couldn't have that run the whole way through. So up here, I only unmuted it all the way through till where that lead comes in. And then there was another part here where I had just a synth playing. And so I was like, oh, I can chop that for the next part. And so I chopped that because that synth stops after that bridge. But I actually, when I made the track for release, I actually just extended it using the copy and paste from the stem. And so that just kept going. So I said, well, that's perfect. So I just took that as a stem over here, chopped that up on the SP, which it has a bit of a different ending. So I had to get a little creative. So when I did that, I chopped it here. That's the first ending, and then this is the second ending. So I was just able to kind of get all of that. Let me go to the chat real quick because it's been buzzing about, I think, rumors of a Mark III. So Romp of Otter says, I've been looking into getting one of these. I saw they dropped in price a bit today. I rarely see Roland stuff on sale. Do you think they might be releasing a Mark III soon, or would it be safe to buy? That's tough. I haven't heard anything. You would think they would have announced that at NAMM. I was at NAMM. I spoke with Roland reps. I had like an hour with a Roland rep talking about the P6 and some other stuff. They knew my channel's all SP. They didn't mention anything. That's not to say they wouldn't. They have no reason to tell me per se, but I would have thought that they might like announce it at NAMM because that would build hype. I think it's 20 years this year though since the SP came out. I think I saw DiBiase post something about that. So there is a possibility about that. With that said, if you look at the history of SPs, they ran the OG SP for a good number of years. The SX was for a really long time, and they just supported the 404. They've been giving the Mark II with updates every year. I think this thing still has a lot to give, and I was talking with someone at the Roland booth. We were just talking. I think they worked on some updates for the SP, and so I think there's still some room that they might have. I don't know though. I have no insider information like Ryan's saying too, but this is still, I think there's still a lot here that they could do. And quite personally, from a consumer angle, I really hope they don't do a Mark III for a while, because I think this is a really awesome piece of gear, and I would love to see them just keep improving it as they've done. They've added the looping, they've added TR Rec mode, they added a sound generator. I think a Mark III would add some really cool stuff for sure, but I think there's still a lot here that they could do, so I almost hope not. But let me read the rest of the chat. Sammy says, I wonder about a Mark III too, but it's tough to say. Oh, a Romp of Otter. Sorry, I didn't answer your question though. I would think you'd be safe, but if you really want to play it safe, wait until April 4th, 404 day, because if they were to announce it and they skip NAMM, that would probably be the day they announce it. or release it if there is something. But the Mark II would go down in price if they do release something. So there is still the option to just get a Mark II at that point. But Sammy's saying, I wonder about a Mark III too, but it's tough to say. No mention of it so far, and they just keep updating the Mark II. Yeah, basically. Okay, so that's basically what I was saying. You said as well. You're right. And like I said, I feel like that's something they would announce at NAMM. Sammy also says it's a great machine and you can always resell it if you end up wanting new gear later. It's so popular. I reckon there will be a market for a long time. Yeah, there's still a market for the SX and the OG. I was just looking on Reverb for an idea I had. Ryan says, I've got no insider knowledge, but Mark II still seems to be getting lots of active development and it's not that old. I really think they're going to support this for a while. And I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm not, though, because strictly speaking, as a consumer, like, this is such a great piece of gear. I would like to keep getting more on it. Like, I put a video out a couple weeks ago or months ago that was things they could still add that would make this pretty much a perfect sampler, at least for me. And a lot of comments about what they'd like to see. Some were talking about a Mark III, but I think there's room here that they can keep adding with what they've done, given the track record in the last 3 years of the updates they've given. Let's see. Otter says, that's what I'm thinking too. Even if a Mark III came out next week, this will last for years. Yeah, this is such a powerful piece of gear that no matter what they add, sorry, my eye is, I got something in my eye, but no matter what they release, like they released the P6, which does have things that the Mark II does not have, which is kind of crazy. And yet, a lot of people, myself included, still gravitate to the SP, especially for live performance and things like that. And I don't think that's going to go away. You got 16-minute per pad sample time, a huge amount of banks and projects and all that type of stuff, all the performance effects. Like, even if they release a Mark III, it's still going to be awesome. Anyways, with that, let's get back to this track, Iridescent Bloom. So this is the first track on my new album. And like I said, so I took that guitar part for the beginning, and then I took the synth part, and all I did were the auto marks, because since I chopped the stems, I made sure it was actually a certain amount of bars rather than just kind of a loose thing. So when you do auto chop, it's going to be pretty easy if you do time division to just chop it in whatever duration or amount you want to chop it in. Now, the one thing with the stem split, if we go back to the track, I have this one drum hit over here right before the drums actually come in. Sorry, hold on, I gotta mute that. Actually, it's over here. I apologize. And so I could just make a chop of these sounds. And actually, one of the nice things with stem split, I kind of redid that fill by chopping up the samples, but I just decided not to. But because it's a stem split, I don't even know if people would necessarily notice it, but on this chop, you can hear some of the fill, that little hi-hat that comes in. So it's still kind of there. Anyways, you might notice there are some clicks and pops from this chop. So what we need to do is go into the envelope of each of these. And so if you're making one-shots or chops out of any samples you're doing for the live performance, check that you just add a very little amount of attack and release to just smooth out any sort of pops and clicks that might appear. You can hear there's a pop there. There was a pop right at the start of that one. Now it's fixed. See the difference? So that works. And then I'm gonna just do that with the synth as well. And with something like a synth, you can even be a little more crazy with the attack to give it more of a kind of swell up. We'll just do that. And that should work. Okay, so just to show you with this song, actually I can do, hold up, that so you can see, where'd it go? There. So you can see the SP and then actually kind of the outline of the track. If I zoom out a little bit, hold on. We'll just run through this track real quick so you can see. So if you look at this version that has nothing here, that's where I'm going to be performing the main guitar part right before this part. Let me see, because I don't know if you can see my mouse with the way I'm doing it, but I cut all of this because that's all the guitar part. So even when the bass comes in, which is over here, it doesn't matter. Like the one shot I made, I just don't have anything when I made this backing track. And then over here, I muted this part because that's the synth I'm going to play. and then we would just mute that. And so that's kind of the stem. So let's run through this track really quick, and then you'll get an idea of kind of how it's structured. So let me just get SX on. All right, and then we'll do it. So okay, the lead's about to come in. Now the guitar's in the one shot. Comes the synth. Okay, and the synth just keeps playing because I muted that synth in the actual track. Hear how the SX reverb hits that snare really nicely. And this will get us nicely to transition effects between tracks. So what I typically do is think of either SX reverb or Kodama as a way to get kind of a ring out. Because you can get this sort of sound, or if we go to Kodama, well, let's not do 30-second note, but we can get this sort of infinity feedback like that. Switch over to our next track, and I have that ending was on bus 2, but this one starts on bus 1 with this chop. So I can just kind of do this. Whoop. So you can do that where I ended it abruptly. I switched to the wrong thing, but you can have that just keep ringing out that ending. If we go back over here, hold on. That's going to be crazy, but we'll not do that. I'm going to hit roll if we go here. So we can get that. That's a rough idea of what we're gonna do. So you can have that looping, and since I don't have bus 1 going into bus 2, that will just keep playing. And then I can just manually shut down the feedback while I'm playing the next part. That's one way to do a transition. You don't necessarily have to have a transition either. You can have songs end and go into the next song. But again, since the primary focus for the set I'm building currently is for a YouTube video, I do want it to be a sort of continuous mix. But if you're playing live, if you've got other instruments, you don't have to. Another option would be, I've got it somewhere, little like short interludes, right? Like you could have that as an interlude. You could have just a drone that you set and have spoken word on top of it. Anything like that could still work to transition between tracks. So what I would do from there though is enter my set map, and I have every bank that each track is on, the order of the tracks that I'm playing, and then if there's any static effects, like I know I want bus 1 SX reverb for that track, and actually like for something like Moon Meld, I actually need to clarify it because I wouldn't just have SX reverb. I want it to start with a filter that I sweep up, and so I would write filter sweep plus SX reverb so that I know, okay, I'm gonna switch to SX reverb after I do the filter sweep. And then we haven't talked about this yet. In my live sets, I'm doing a lot, right? Like I like to keep it engaging, but sometimes you need a little breather or breathing room. And so I have tracks that will just be one shots that I can just do performance effects on and then prep the SP for the next part. Because basically, if we look, this is bank G. So if we go over to bank G, I have, actually I think it's bank B. I think I was tripping when I wrote that. Yeah, it's bank B. I have to fix that. But on bank B, I have this track Chroma Prism, and it's just a one shot with nothing missing. It's just a full track which is a totally fine way to play live, switching between stuff. But this is my breathing room, so I hit that, and I don't need to be in that bank anymore because the final track, which is on bank H, I have to do a lot. Like you can see, I have filter, then SX reverb, and it's all performance. So this kind of gives me a second to get ready, take a breath, go to bank H, and then get my bus effects ready. So I know I want that one on there. And then I can still do performance effects on this track. And there you go. And then when that song ends, I could do some sort of SX reverb on top of it, or Kodama, one of those transition effects. Another thing you can even do is just dead stop it, maybe with a faster stop time like that. And then you can start your other track. Just make sure you end the one playing if it's not going to just stop on its own. And now I can have that second track start. Maybe shut off stopper now so I don't forget it later. And this is one of those times like I have that filter plus SX reverb because I'm starting the track. I took this main sample and it's just one full loop of the synth, but I did it at a fully open filter or wherever I end the track's filter, like in the full track. So I can kind of do this to create motion instead of just having a full track. Because let's say, so for the full track, right, let's say it's 2 minutes of a synth that the filter's moving up and down. So I found the loudest part of that filter whenever it was open the most, and I made that loop of just that section, maybe 4 bars or 8 bars. And I set this to loop, and it's just gonna keep playing that, but I can control the filter now as if it was being automated by using Super Filter. So adding a little bit of a live treatment to this. And then once I need it to be opened up, I can turn on that SX reverb to give it a little more reverb or something like that. And then what I'm doing is over on bus 2, I have another 4-bar loop of the lead, and then I have stems or one-shots of the bass. So I can do this. Play the track as I would. And then maybe we'll throw on SX reverb. And this is my end track, right? Nice ambient track. And then I can even shut this one off. Maybe turn on some ocean noise. I think that's the ocean. Go back to filter for that. And then we can bring it back in. Now with the filter on it, right? So I'm creating dynamics in the track with just these one-shots using the filter on the SP, and then just kind of treating it almost as if I was muting parts live on like a Ableton Push or something, right? Like turning things on and off. The only issue with that is you have to be pretty precise with your timings because there's no sort of like engage at start of bar. It's all just when you hit it, it starts playing. So like, because I was talking, I hit that one wrong when I was bringing it back in. So it's just slightly off time. But that is probably my most ambitious one, even though it's probably the simplest track, right? It's just an ambient little vignette. It's the most live I can get these sort of one-shots, and you could totally replicate this with a beat type of track where you could be playing drums on top of it or triggering the different sounds. But I thought this was an interesting way to keep some semblance of the original track by having these 4-bar loops, but then having chops of things and being able to turn them on and off to create a fully live version of it from triggering samples. So this is kind of where I want to take the next live set, doing something more like that. But for this one, it's just the ending. And that's why I have that break right before it on not bank G, on bank B, where I'm going to chill out and get that all set up, setting up the filter and all that type of stuff. So when it comes to the set list you're making, you can think about it in a few different ways. The actual performance of it, and have breaks, do whatever between tracks. Like think of the ways you're performing each track and have it flow that's easiest for you to play, but then also think about the tracks themselves. So I like to start with something kind of more energetic and then build it up and then maybe hit a point and then bring it back down. And the last track is usually my kind of chill outro. Other ways you could do it is start with a cool like drone at the start, you know, like an interesting vignette or something, and then get into it. But typically when it comes to, again, I have to think as a YouTuber, you want to get engagement right at the start. And so something more high energy has for me at least been proven best. So that's my set, basically what I'm building. If you've got any questions about this, throw them in the chat. I'll stay on here for a couple minutes. I'm going to double check if there's anything else I needed to cover. If you do want a full guide on all things SP404, talking all about using this for live performance, using it for beat making, all of the different performance effects, what works for different sound types, you know, drums versus melodic sounds and things like that, you can check out my SP404 cheat sheet and quick start guide. It's an easy to reference guide on all things SP. The link's in the description. Channel members get it for free though, and channel members at the Solar Sailor tier and up get all of the samples. So like I'll be throwing up these guitar chops for my track and all that stuff. So if you want to help support the channel, that is the best way. But of course, just hanging out, commenting, leaving a like, it all helps, and it's massively appreciated. So yeah, if you've got any questions, throw it in, because I remember there's one other thing I need to talk about, and that's bus 3 and 4. So we talked already about the two different ways you can use bus 1 and 2. And hopefully, because of how I was explaining switching between the ends of tracks and getting those cool transitions, that's why I've got bus 1 and bus 2 running in parallel, not together. But typically I do run bus 1 into bus 2. But for this reason, for these live set transitions and stuff, I find doing it this way works really well. And then also if you're doing a track, we didn't talk about this method, but if we use one of my older songs from a live set, this is Soundtrack for a Rainy Day, I have the stems, so it's a one shot, right? It's just gonna play the whole song all the way through. I don't need to play anything on top, but I set the drums to bus 2 and everything else to bus 1. And so if I do it this way, then any effects I do on bus 2 aren't gonna affect bus 1. So I can do reverb just on the drums, right? A filter on the drums. This crazy little thing that works great for transitions, like this here. I love doing that. If I were to set that bus 1 to bus 2, just for an example, everything is going to get treated by that. So that's why for live performance, I like to keep them running separate. But when I make tracks on here, like the song Lingering Light, I definitely ran everything from bus 1 into bus 2, because then you get 4 effects rather than 3 per bus that you're doing. And then if you are using external stuff like guitar, I see you, Rump of Otters, but I'll answer that in a second. You get that 5th one, and then they all run into all 5, really, or well, then that sound would go through all 5. So good for resampling and stuff like that. Okay, but bus 3 and 4, I like to treat bus 3 and 4 as my master. So I made sure, luckily I had all of the pre-masters and masters of these tracks, and so I took the pre-masters because I want everything to be a little closer in volume. And as we discussed at the start, I actually went in and found similar volumes using just a meter, multimeter in Logic. You can see the decibel levels and all that of each track. And I just tried to get them a little closer in volume, because for the live set, I want it to be a little more similar in tone, because some are a lot louder, some are a lot quieter. They don't need to be exact. Like there's no reason for that. You want dynamics in a live set, but I didn't want them to be so drastically different that I'd have to go in post and just do some volume tweaks like on the final version. But bus 3 and 4 I like to have as my first round of mastering if I don't want to master in post. So for me, that's typically cassette sim with a little drive and a little wow and flutter. Hopefully you can see that all right. I have drive at 6, wow and flutter at 16. Everything else is set to 0. And then for bus 4, I will either do compressor or 303 vinyl sim. I've really lately been coming around more to the 303 sims compressor than just the stock compressor on here, because I also like adding additional wow and flutter. I have it on 40, so quite a lot of wow and flutter on this. And then if you really wanted it, you could get that 303 noise on there too, but I don't want that. But the compressor on the 303 vinyl sim is crazy, and I like that it's just one knob. So for this, I kind of just dial it in and then let it be, rather than on the compressor we have, let's go back to here, hold on. Over on the compressor, we have a lot of other settings. We got to go sustain, attack, ratio, and I'd rather just not worry about it, because if I really need proper compression to master things and stuff, I could do that in the DAW. So I want more of that kind of just crazy SP compression, and the 303 does it really well. All right, so that's my 303, not 303, that's my bus 3 and 4 mastering. This is the glue for me. If we shut that off, just listen to that versus, oh, we're a little off. Just kind of brings it together, makes it a little noisier. I mean, I could also just bypass them instead of switching between, but I like having that. If you have a 3 and 4 recipe, what your favorite is for bus 3 and 4, put it in the chat or throw it in the comments. In the interim, we got Romp of Otters asks, how does plugging a guitar in work with the SP? Can I play along to a backing track live? Yes, you can. My guitar is back there. I don't think I can reach it. But all you got to do is plug it into the input, which is down here. Turn on your input setting. You actually have a amp sim, which is actually pretty decent. The guitar, that's the amp sim from there. That's on my baritone Jazzmaster. And then you just set to, you can just hit play, and if you have external source turned on, you can play right on top of it. So I could trigger this and be playing the live guitar right on top of it, no problem. And then if you're recording and things like that, there's a couple other tweaks you can do and things. But if you're playing live like that, yeah, all you have to do is plug in. I'm checking, hold up. I think I just saw a cable earlier. Here. Let's do this real quick. It's not a guitar. My guitar's way over there behind my drum kit, and I don't feel like grabbing it. But I'll take this S1, which should have some battery left in it. And if I can find, might have one problem though. If I can't find the jack or the 1/4 inch, I just saw it, but that's how it all, oh, here it is. It's right here. We put that there, and then we'll put that in the input. And if we turn this on, I'm going to mute that in case sometimes there's like some crazy noise when you turn something on. Yeah, it's got a really good amp sim. Romp of Otters says, I didn't know that it had an amp sim. Yeah, it's a pretty solid amp sim. You can't do like cabinet simulation and things like that, but the amps on there are pretty good. I've got a blog post walking through all of the different amp settings and which they model, because they model like, I think, a Mesa Boogie, the Fender Twin, I want to say, and a couple others. They're all pretty good. They've even got like a high distortion one. I forget which one it models off of, but see that? We've got, let's just lower the volume here. Sorry if that like blasted your ears. So let's go, I forget. But yeah, see, I could just play right on top. I have no idea. I'd have to remember what key this is in, because that's a baritone that I think I'm playing 3. Well, E sounds good. But anyways, you get the point. Oh, I know. We'll go to Lingering Light, because I believe Lingering Light is in C. And let's go to a different sound, just to show you that we could do live performance right on top. Oh, these are the stock sounds. Let's get out of that. Go to pattern 4. What do we have here? Well, that's cool. So let's go to Lingering Light. Go up an octave. There you go. All I had to do. Yeah, so all you have to do if you want to play guitar, whatever instrument, is just turn this on, and then you get that 5th bus effect. So it's actually set to an amp sim. Let's turn on Juno chorus. Ignore the click for a second. There you go. So yeah, it's pretty easy. It's convenient. You have all of these effects you could throw this through. So like I did that, but let's do like downer. It drops it an octave. Warm saturator, get some crazy distortion on it. So you get all of those that are live effects on top that are just with your external input. But then you also get, you could send it through here. Actually, I think I have it going through bus 2. Yeah. But you can change what routing even that's doing. Ryan says, got to drop. No worries, Ryan. Awesome to have you on. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon. Otter says, so cool. I'm just getting into electronic music. Got a T8 and J6 to see if I liked it, and I really do. That's a good combo. Yeah, I don't have either of those. I have the boutique Roland TR08, but I've got the P6, which I use all the time on the channel, and then someone let me borrow this S1, so I've been using that quite a lot. And this combo is a ton of fun. I'll have a video on that soon. Any other questions, though, drop them now, because I think that about wraps it up. If you do want to check out the songs I was showing from this, they are on my new album. It's not just on cassette, it's on digital. Some of the tracks are on streaming, but I'm not putting full albums up on streaming anymore. But it's called Through the Quiet Dark, and it's on my Bandcamp, which I have the link in the description, or you can search Sunwarper on any of your streaming platforms and you'll find it there. Rompavouter says, man, this thing is even cooler than I thought. It's really cool. It's a jack of all trades. One thing that I like and was wanting to show in this video is that when it comes to the SP, it does a lot of things at least decently or very competently. But what I like about that is if you find a way to make tracks or perform tracks live on it, most likely you can refine it and turn it into something. Like with that last track we were talking about, Wind Whispers, that ambient one, that's almost acting like a, well, not a looper, but like the push, you know, where you can trigger different loops. The only difference is I don't have like a BPM sync where it's gonna wait when I press it to start on count 1. It just starts playing. So there are some limitations to every workflow and method, but the beauty of it, in my opinion, is that if you have a way you like to play, you can most likely do it and then refine it to its strengths and work around its weaknesses. By no means is it like a perfect piece of gear. Like I was saying, there's this limitation when you're doing that method and things like that. And I find its MIDI out is not always the best, but MIDI in is amazing with it. Like I've done sets with the Digitact and the SP because you can have those long samples on here and then have a lot more performance stuff and things and then get these effects. But yeah, I think with that, let me double check these notes. I think we've gone through everything. So yeah, if you want to check out the album, it's here. There's a couple of cassettes left. There's only a few left. So if you want to grab them, hit that Bandcamp link below. I'll be putting some of these samples up for Solar Sailor tier and up channel members, but I'd love it if you check it out. It is the best way to help support the channel. And next week, I'm going to have a new video making a beat on the Polyan tracker, having never used a tracker before. It's a really fun piece of gear, but I wanted to see, without reading a manual, without doing any of that, how easy is it to use? Because trackers can seem a little intimidating, but I can report it's awesome. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really stoked with the video. I can't wait to share it. And I think the week after that, we might do some boom bap on here, live stream, like sample in maybe some drums from my drum kit and guitar through the SP's amp sim, but into here and chop things up. This actually is a crazy sampler. The workflow takes a little bit of getting used to, but the way the tracker works, where every step can be programmed and things like that, it's pretty crazy. So we'll be talking about that, but then I'll have this live set coming out. I'm trying to figure out where I want to film it because I want to film it outside somewhere. So I'm looking at some places. But if you have any ideas of where you'd want to see me play the SP live for a video, let me know in the comments. I'm still mapping out some places. And with that, I think we'll call it. If there's anything you want to know about the live set that I'm doing, the methods I'm using, or other methods, ideas you have for the SP, post them in the comments. Commenting after the video end does help a ton, and I really appreciate it. But with that, I think we'll call it. I'll be back next week, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.